Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the 2018 to 2027 Chiron in Aries transit. Now, for the most part of the period from April 17th, 2018 to April 14th, 2027, Chiron will be transiting Aries. Now you're going to have a couple periods where it won't be. It'll be going be in Pisces from like September 26, 2018 to February 18, 2019, and then you're going to have it in Taurus for a little bit. It's going to be in Taurus during that period from June, I believe June 19, 2026 to September 18th to 2026. But for most of that period, as I stated before, from April 17, 2018 to April 14, 2027, it will be, Chiron will be in Aries. Now, during this time, Aries, will strongly be impacted. Aries, Sun, Moon, Ascendant people, everyone collectively may be impacted, but Aries especially. I expect during this time, during this Chiron and Aries transit, I expect during this time to see increased warfare and, of course, obviously much wound suffering because of it. There may be more injuries, wounds, contusions reported as far as connected with the head, the face, and the brain during this time. Perhaps more facial eruptions, apoplexy, aneurysms, and cases of anemia. Now, also perhaps more injuries connected with adventure sports such as cycling, perhaps injuries to the head, especially due to foolhardiness and not taking the precautions such as wearing helmets. Also, too, during this time when Chiron's going to be in Aries, there can be much sorrow due to feelings of unworthiness and maybe identity issues and crisis that others may be dealing with. Now, also, too, you might see more concussions. Now, I don't want to sound apocalyptic or anything, or, be overly negative or pessimistic, but I would not be shocked, be flabbergasted, or be in a state of shock if a third world war was to take place during this time. I mean, remember, nine years is a very long period, and really, also too, the thing about this is during the time, last time Chiron was in Aries, we had during that period, you had two assassination attempts at least two assassination attempts on prominent people at this time, Martin Luther King Jr. and of course Robert Kennedy. Now, going back to the war, you also had during the latter part of the Vietnam War and latter part of World War I believe Chiron was in Aries. Now, and obviously this Chiron and Aries energy will be much different in contrast to when Chiron was in more submissive, passive Pisces. Now, emotional suffering and wounds may be strongly attributed to feelings of unworthiness, the lack of identity, and might literally be more headaches during this time. And also, too, there's going to be, I do believe, greater propensity, of course, for war, combat, assassination attempts. And keep in mind that, you look at this, keep in mind that Chiron is the wounded healer. So perhaps people that may be facing, they might be facing repercussions in some cases to actually lacking in enterprise, initiative, aggression, and courage and fortitude, but they may encourage others to do so, applying those same characteristics. It might be hard for many of us to be confrontational during this time, more so than others, standing up for oneself, but we could strongly, readily encourage others to take action in standing up for oneself and be more confrontational. Now, the thing about this too, going back to the assassinations, I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were both assassinated when Chiron was in the early Aries degrees in 1968. Now, what I find interesting is that Chiron is going to, when it enters Aries at 0 degrees, it will be in Donald Trump's natal 8th house, and it will make a close in conjunct to his very exceptionally late Leo ascendant. Could there be an assassination attempt on him? Well, I mean, in all likelihood not, but I do think, talking about the propensity again, it does increase that probability, at least marginally, for this. Now, the thing about this is, and going back before, reiterating about people collectively being impacted by this transit, but especially Sun, Moon, and Ascendant in Aries people, and even more so when this transit makes a conjunction to one of those points. Now, Aries, Sun, and Ascendant people may have to deal with a lot more issues connected, suffering with their vitality and stamina, while Aries Moon people may feel more emotional suffering, more emotional energy dissipation and drainage at this time than usual. And Aries Ascendant people will actually feel more, really, it might be more wounds connected with the physical body. And keep in mind that, I mean, Aries is ruled by Mars, which is gunfire, and I mean, so Aries, really, especially Ascendant people, need to be exceptionally prudent and careful at that time, especially if they're in a position which requires volatility or a lot of confrontation, working with like auto repossession, or in some law enforcement field, because there's really a much greater proclivity perhaps to being shot at this time, I would think, than usual. So anyway, well, the thing too is I do expect a strong proliferation and escalation in forest fires, arson crimes, warfare, soldiers dying, wounded, gunfire shootings, firefightings, and just fires in general. Now, the thing about this too, I also would anticipate an escalation and ascension perhaps of brain damage situations like in the NFL and sports in general, concussion situations in the National Football League. And also too, it's important, of course, to look at the house that Chiron in Aries is transiting, as this, of course, can strongly impact the delineation. Now, in my case, it's going to fall in my 12th house. Now, this indicates that I may be going through some emotional suffering and wounds connected, maybe with not acting aggressively or showing enterprise and initiative in connection with limitations, restrictions, and fears. I hope I'm not in any battle with spiritual warfare at this time, but I'm only kidding about that. But anyway, also too, this could be about, hopefully I won't be, this could indicate for me perhaps acrimonious actions may lead to self-undoing. Hopefully there's not going to be any imprisonment on my part for any volatile actions at this time. Hopefully not. And also too, this could be about perhaps that really, when I look at this as well, that even though during this time when I have a transit in Aries, and it'll, transit Chiron in Aries will be in my 12th house for the majority of the transit, difficulties I may be going through in connection with that transit, I could help others out, of course, with a lot of that Aries-like aggressiveness, assertiveness, forcefulness, fortitude, and a strong outspokenness. And also at this time for me, what makes this a doozy, of course, I'm going to be going through my Chiron return. And Chiron returns, I believe, can really be, I mean, for me, in this case, it might be about, I may fester a little bit, and it might exacerbate the connection, the energy connected with my natal placement. And this could be a time too where it could be more very introspective for me, where I might feel more desolate and alone than usual, but because of the Chiron return, it'll enable me to be cognizant of the placement and the reasons perhaps for sorrow and suffering in connection with it. Now, what's also important, of course, is to look at the aspects that this Chiron in Aries transit makes to natal points in your chart, as of course this could impact the interpretation as well. Now, at some point in the transit, Chiron in Aries is going to make an opposition aspect to my natal Uranus in the 6th house. Now, this could indicate perhaps, there might be some opposition and like a tug of war between helping others, trying to help others aggressively and assertively in connection with the metaphysical, and in this case for me, of course, likely being astrology, and perhaps dealing also with enigmatic health issues at the same time, or some unusual, or I should say some instability in my daily routine. And it could also be where I might be, there might be a pull between dealing with some private suffering connected with maybe some acrimonious energy, and it might oppose the astrological work that perhaps I may be doing, because the astrological work could, of course, as well be connected with Uranus, my natal Uranus in the 6th house placement. So that could obviously be causing at that time a lot of exasperation and tension with me. So anyway, well, I think what's going to be interesting too, as far as any points during this transit, it's going to be right near the beginning point of this transit actually. Now on May 15th, 2018, at this time, okay, Chiron will be at like 1 degree Aries, but you're going to have Uranus entering Taurus at this time. So of course there's going to be a tremendous shift in astrological energy going on. You're also going to have the new moon in Taurus at this time as well. And the United States will of course still be going through its Pluto return in the 2nd house of monetary matters. Chiron again, of course, will be in its early Aries stage still. And really, I think you have, that initiative with the Aries energy. This could suggest all this energy at this time. Could we be looking at a new economical system for the United States? Could cash become obsolete? I think it might be close to it at that time. It might be a little drastic to think, well, everything, all paper money is going to be eradicated, but I think I'm already experiencing some changes. I went to my Western Union branch in my local area is now paperless in terms of filling out, in terms of doing the forms and sending money, Western Union. I think we're already seeing some precursors right now to that Uranus and Taurus energy. And when at my local bank recently, I wanted to do a withdrawal, and that was paperless. So anyway, but going back to this Chiron and Aries transit, and going back to this Uranus and Taurus energy, etc. Now, you're also, not only on May 5th, 2018, not only you're going to have Uranus entering Taurus, have the new moon in Taurus, have Chiron and Aries be at that exceptionally early stage. Also, too, you look at the Chiron and Aries energy, of course, that could be some suffering due to things that are overly aggressive, impetuous, and impulsive. Now, the sun is also going to be near the fixed star algol position. Now, generally, I think this could mean that people might be becoming very obsessed, getting very fixated, perhaps over some new economical change. Will there be literal beheadings at this time? Well, maybe likely not, but you always have an increase for this time. People, you have this angry Chiron and Aries energy, and you have to remember that Aries is associated with the head, and you're also very early Aries degree, so it is something to look at. Now, And really going back to this could be a very, fixated, obsessed period with some new economical situation going on for the U.S. And the Chiron and Aries energy might actually help propel this. Being at 1 degree Aries and running 0 to 1 degrees, I see, of signs. This could be about the initiation of things. Now, Mars will be at 29 degrees Capricorn at this time, so that may reaffirm completion of something actually military, government related. And also Black Moon Lilith is going to make a tight conjunction to Pluto in Capricorn. Could this be an unveiling of a government nuclear weapon? And going back, not to be overly redundant, but to the Chiron and Aries at 1 degree. So really, 29 degrees of Mars, okay, can suggest very surfite, acerbic energy, and it could escalate into something volatile. So all these things, I mean, could really be a very big period when we hit mid-May of 2018. I think it's very significant. It could be something to really look at. So, well, anyway, thing I want to talk about as far as this goes now, last but not least, just in general for the U.S., I noticed that the Chiron's transit in Aries will be mainly in the U.S., will be in the United States 4th house for most of the period. So perhaps this could be about maybe an escalation and ascension of domestic violence situations for the U.S., maybe more people being angry. Maybe there's acrimonious energy in connection with people's emotional security or lack of it maybe during this time in the United States. Maybe there's it could be also too maybe some anger of who maybe people are at the core in the United States. And the thing too is, of course, I'm using the Sagittarius rising chart for the United States. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the 2018 to 2027 Chiron and Aries transit. Stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be giving you part 2 of my Chiron and Aries transit, in which I talk about how specifically this transit might impact the zodiac signs Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.